So what's up, everyone? It is your girl JL Beauty 87 here, aka Grace, and today we're gonna get into forgotten palettes. So this is another installment of my Once Type Palettes Where Are They Now series. So what I do is I go back and look at older palettes and we talk about, you know, what happened to them, why people stopped talking about them. Like, was it the color story that's not popular right now? Was it that they moved on to better things? Was it that you know, the time for the brand has passed and it's not a hyped brand anymore, and that's why people aren't talking about it? But we're going to talk about those things today. So I figured I would start off with some of my black owned brands, and I actually have like 3 really popular palettes that I feel like made this brand really popular. I'm gonna start off with the most popular of them all and then go down accordingly, even though all of them are super popular, which is why I'm confused. But we're gonna start with the Color Rain Queen of Hearts palette. Now, I still hear people from time to time refer to this palette, but I don't really hear people talk about this brand as a whole anymore. So that's why I wanted to put them at the top in the spotlight to make y'all remember. Color Rain got some bangers. Don't be confused. Color Rain got some bangers. Now, the new stuff may not be as exciting as the original stuff was, but they got some bangers, and don't ever confuse them. Some things are just staples that you need, and I feel like this is the brown girl friendly version of the Modern Renaissance palette. So I feel like if you're a brown girl, this is a requirement that you need to have in your collection in your life, because honey, this palette made points, it did things, and it had us out here looking flawless with all this gorgeous color stories here. So people still refer to the brand. I feel like when they do, they refer to this palette in general, so that's why I wanted to start off with it. But I feel like you don't ever see people doing tutorials on it, using it, or really speaking too much on it. So I mean, you'll see it in somebody's collection video and they'll say they're keeping it because it was fire, but I mean, like, you don't see nobody talking about it or really using it. And I want to remind y'all that Color Rain is that chick, and put some respect on her name. So next, I have my favorite, like, this was my all-time favorite rainbow palette until I got my Blends Bunny palette. This is the Color Rain Vivid Pressed Pigments and Shadows palette. It's what she looks like on the inside. Absolutely stunning. I mean, they literally gave me a whole row of purple and blue. What is there not to love about this palette for me? I mean, let's think about it. I'm wearing blue on my eyes right now. I'm into the blues, the purples, and the greens. There aren't that many greens in here, but it gave you lots of blues and purples, which I was most excited about because I was more into blue at the time when I first started makeup, and that's when I got this palette. So this is one of my all-time favorite palettes from them. They started off in like a little I think quad thing that they had going on, not quad, but you know, like a little magnetic palette that they had stuck all these colors in. Sorry, y'all, something in my eye. And then they ended up coming in and making a whole palette out of it. And the formula on this, I hear, is not that easy for some people to work with, but it worked for me just fine. I know Colorful Camille says she doesn't like the formula on this, but I love the formula on this. I love this palette, and this is one of my all-time favorite Color Rain palettes. And I don't know why nobody talks about it anymore. I mean, I know why nobody's talking about it anymore, because like I said, people don't really talk about this brand anymore. After they came out with the Juicy Boost, I feel like that like set them back a bit with like consumers, because people weren't really liking it. So I understand with them why it isn't, but that doesn't change that these 3 palettes I'm about to show you is fire. Like the last one, Safari Rain. Everybody loves Safari Rain, okay? Like, I remember when this sold out and everybody wanted it, and they had to keep bringing it back in stock. And then from time to time, they still bring it back in stock to this day, I'm told. But this palette was loved by so many people. People was absolutely crazy about this palette. They wanted this palette really bad because you got your greenish, bluish section here for people like me. You got your orange tones for people who like warm tones. And then you got your cool tone, smoky eye, neutral moment if you need that. So it has everything that I guess they feel like you would need in a 9-pan palette when you think about it. Because you can mix the oranges with the greens. You can have your neutral moment, like I said, or you can pick some neutrals with the orange to have an everyday look if you want to pop a color. And then you got your fun pops color in the middle. So it has everything that you need. And this is the old formula that's fine. The new formula I tried after the Juicy Boost is okay, but nothing's like those. And those are ones you won't hear anybody talk about anymore. Which I'm sad, because Color Rain was out here hitting it and making big things until the formula changed. So I brought those up to make sure we remember the Color Rain was out here giving the girls what they needed. And maybe you'll dig back in your collection, remember how they was giving them what you need, especially the last one I just showed, because it's summer and those are definitely giving summer colors and summer vibes. Thank you. Next, I have the one that I compare to the Safari Rain palette, which is the Tribe palette. Now, I know they don't make this one anymore, but oh my god, did people talk about this palette. Everybody's talking about how wonderful it was, how stunning it was, and then comparing it to the one I just showed you. Because when you think about it, they do look similar. There's this neutral row right here, there's this orange row right here, and then there's this greenish row right here. The only difference is she put bright green mattes in here. She put this cool shimmery shade in, and then this neutral is in like a deep tone for Outer V. For a smoky eye, it has like this weird greenish, pukey yellow undertone to it that makes it look, you know, as stunning as it does. So The reason I feel like people probably don't talk about this palette anymore though is because they don't make it anymore. Like they have it on there that says join the waiting list, and then every once in a full moon they'll bring one out. But I don't know if the pigments in that one are ran out and they couldn't do it like they did in the Kaleidos, what was it, the Deep Sea Luster palette or whatever. So I don't know, but that was one of my favorites, and I would talk about it a lot too. But again, you try not to talk about stuff when people can't get it because you don't want them getting mad at you. So next, we're going to talk about Too Faced. Y'all remember how famous the Sweet Peach palette was? Everybody was going crazy when they couldn't get it. And then when they finally brought it out, everybody had to get it. When the last time you heard anybody, seen anybody talk about this or do anything with it? You haven't. Mine is near and dear to my heart, and I will always hold on to it. This is the first luxury makeup palette my grandmother bought me, and my grandmother's the reason I started using makeup. All my old followers know this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because we here. My grandma ended up having dementia for about 5 years, and she had to move in with us, and that's why I had to come visit the house that we film in because she couldn't live here by herself anymore. But the first year she moved in this house for my birthday, she bought me this palette because I had finally started using makeup like she has. And I will always hold on to this palette because it was really popular on YouTube, and that's how I started finding out about how to use makeup properly. And it's just a special palette to me. I know a whole bunch of people wanted this and was coveted, and I just think it's funny how nobody talks about it anymore. But I was never truly in love with the color story because you got to think, I'm always talking about all the ashy tones I can't use, and Too Faced is known for putting ashy tones in their palettes along with Urban Decay, which is probably why I don't really talk about them about too much of their stuff, because it's like I know it's gonna be shades in here that I'm guaranteed not able to use because I'm not a person who puts those type of shades on the lid. So I personally still like the palette for the sentimental reasons, but it never had that many peach tones in it to begin with, and I always thought that was weird because it's called a sweet peach. But he explained why it was called that and everything. I just think I love how it's changed and nobody wants to talk about it. But I don't think those are the type of peach tones people want anymore, and people aren't really into peach tones anymore. In my personal opinion, I feel like we're back to the pop of blue effect with neutral palettes, and people are trying to get into like a little bit more grungy makeup, but not too much. People are just trying to stick to what they know, which is the neutrals. Next, I have the Kaleidos, what is these, 6-pan palettes? They 5 or 6 pan, yeah, the 6-pan palettes. People were obsessed with these, talking about these all the time, especially this one right here, Astral Pink. I feel like I heard about Astral Pink quite a bit, or Sci-Fi Green. I don't have my Sci-Fi Green anymore. I got rid of it because I had the Gemini. I didn't feel like I needed both. I didn't realize they were going to like discontinue it, and since I do review the brand now, I wish I had kept mine, but alas, doesn't matter. I have Astral Pink here. This was my favorite one anyway. I love the color story of this. I love the shifting blue to purple shade up here, and I like mixing this color with that shade, dusting one of these in the crease, and then putting this shade in my inner corner. I've never actually used the black with the sparkle in it just because I don't like blacks with sparkle in it, but I feel like when they first came out and they were really popular, everybody, and I mean everybody, was talking about Astral Pink and how pretty the color story was, and how the 6-pan palettes from Kaleidos was all that. And then like after they did the Lunar Lavender stuff, they just stopped and started these giant boxes that they've been making, and now they got those little weird quads. I didn't buy the quads because, you know, they were neutrals, but I understand that they needed to add neutrals to the collection because they're known for having a whole bunch of color and they wanted money from that neutral market. So I get it, but like y'all need to come back with some 6-pans. Or at least give us another like big palette, not the little one in the Flower Punk and all that. Like give us some more 6-pans, or give us another big weird ass palette like, you know, Skate Pod and Angie's palette. Next, I have the Ambreezy palette. I feel like people talked about this a lot when it came out, and it was in people's favorites and all that. I think it was in my favorites too, because I really love the shade Cupcake. I know everybody's obsessed with the shade Barb, but Cupcake is actually my favorite shade in this palette. I think it's stunning. I like to use this in Cupcake, and like I think I use this as the shade that goes in my crease, and that's my like go-to look with this palette. But I feel like you can do more than just that. It's just since I love the shade Cupcake, when I reach for this palette, I always want to choose Cupcake. Now with other people, I don't know why people stopped talking about this palette. I guess because you can't get it anymore. Like when it went 50% off on Sephora, I had made sure my friend grabbed it because she was talking about how she was looking at it and how the shade Barb was so pretty and how she wanted it. So when I found it 50% off, I made sure she got it. But I don't know, after a while I feel like people just stopped talking about this palette and other things came up, because I mean the color story was okay, but the fact that she put 2+ glitters in here was kind of a turn off for me. But How did you all feel about that palette? Because I liked it okay. I just wasn't obsessed with. I feel other people obsessed. Like I know, what's her name? Paulina Beauty. She like used up a whole palette just because she used the shade Barb and some other shades up, and somebody sent her their palette, and then she had like the W7 dupe version of it. So it's like it was out here really making moves, and like, you know, people was really talking about it, and then it just disappeared. And I was just like, oh, okay. Now I'm gonna take us back for real. Y'all remember the Dose of Color 5-pan palettes? I feel like nobody talks about these anymore. And they just came out with 2 new ones, and I haven't seen anybody talk about them besides UOMA Beauty. I think she bought the Baked Browns Volume 2, she said, because she wanted to put them with all her special like shimmery shades. And she likes to have a new crease with shimmery shades, kind of like, what do you call it? No, I'm sorry, that was the Net's Makeup Corner that said she bought the Baked Browns to put with her shimmers when she went on vacation. But yeah, when these first came out, I feel like everybody was talking about them. I liked the Making Mauves. They're pretty cool. And this one's okay. I'm not obsessed with reds, but I brought this to do with another palette from theirs for a video concept. So that's why I brought this one in particular. But my favorite one was Making Mauves and Pretty Cool. But anyway, I feel like nobody really talks about these palettes anymore. Like they had the... I feel like everybody used to talk about Destiny and Katie's palette for a really long time, and they finally stopped too. But I feel like people don't really talk about Dose of Colors as a brand anymore. Like after they did their concealers, like I feel like they just disappeared and nobody talked about them and nobody's really like concerned. And I'm curious as to why, because like they have good lip products. Everything they come out with is decent quality. It's not like it's bad. I don't know if people just didn't think it was exceptional and that's why they stopped talking about the brand, but I'm just genuinely curious why nobody really talks about them anymore. I know because like they usually do all matte monochromatic color stories, and you got to think if that's what ColourPop is doing too, and they're going to sell it to me for cheaper, and they always having sales, like, and in the economy that we're in now, I can understand why people wouldn't want to buy them from Dose of Colors, because it's like you can buy from ColourPop for cheaper, and not that it's going to be the exact same quality, but it's going to be cheaper and it's still going to get the job done. And gas is $6 a gallon. So we got to prioritize, you know, because gas is $6 a gallon. So I can understand why people don't really talk about or the Dose of Colors ones anymore, because it had been forever since she came out with one. She just came out with those 2 recently and then had like the anniversary sale. And I ended up getting both of them for the 1K giveaway because we're so close on Instagram to getting to 1K. I'm at like 966. So once we get to 1K, I'm going to have a giveaway going on over there. So just stay tuned for that. Now some of these other palettes, well, let me get through the last 2 old ones and then we'll get into some somewhat minor palettes. One of these brands, I don't even know if it exists anymore because I feel like people used to talk about it a lot and now it doesn't even appear anymore. It's not the one I'm going to talk about right now. It's the one I'm going to talk about after this. But the Jaclyn Hill palette from Morphe. The original one. Not the sunrise looking pink, purple, orange, yellow one she came out with. This one. Before the formula changed. How many people was talking about this palette? Everybody in the world was talking about this damn palette. I ended up getting it just because I could get it at a deal and everybody was saying the formula was really good, and I don't think I had ever tried Morphe's formula because I had never tried a Morphe palette. So this was my first ever Morphe palette to try, and it actually was pretty good considering, you know, it was Morphe and I had heard that like people were just pushing codes and the stuff wasn't actually good. So I was impressed by this palette. I didn't use it that much though because you got to think it's a whole bunch of neutral tones, and when you open it up, if I cover up this part, what the hell is exciting about this palette? Without those fun pops of color at the bottom, this is just another one of their giant ass boring palettes, and they just put 4 pops of color in the corner that your eyes are attracted to, like, oh, it's colorful. No, the fuck it's not. Look at that. It's like a 35 with 4 fun shades in it. And the funny thing is I've never used any of the fun shades in this palette. I think I used this one time in the inner corner, but I've never used any of the fun shades in this palette. When I did use it, the very few times that I used it, because we know I'm not a Morphe fan, but I just loved how everybody talked about it, praised about it, thought it was so wonderful, and then you haven't heard a thing about it since. You haven't heard a thing about it in a while. But I don't know, I'm assuming it's because she started her own brand you hadn't heard a thing about, and you expected her to come out with more eyeshadows. Or hoping she would come out with eyeshadows from her brand. She finally has. I didn't try them because it just looked like a really boring palette. If she comes out with a more exciting palette, or if the palette goes on sale, then I'd be willing to try it to see what the quality is going to be like moving forward. But it's hard to tell because she said her mom had helped her with the formula of the palette that she did come out with. So now I'm like, I don't know if I want to buy that one, because the next one I buy after that might not even be the same formula and quality because you and your mom collabed on that and it's not, you know, it's not necessarily the formula that you chose. So I think I'm gonna just wait and see what she actually has to use as opposed to like what her and her mom picked. Next is the Scott Barnes Color Bomb palette. I feel like when his brand first came out, all the luxury makeup channels were talking about him, and I don't hear anybody saying anything about him. And I'm like, does the brand even still exist? I'm genuinely curious because people used to talk about this all the time when he came out with palettes. They would review them, and when he came out with lip products and highlighters and stuff, I know Babs Beauty would review them, Stephanie here on YouTube, but I'm like, I haven't seen anybody talk about this brand at all. So I'm like, does it still exist? And I'm not trying to be rude or funny, I'm just legitimately asking the question, does this brand still exist? Because it's like, I got this palette, I think, on sale when he first started just to try out the formula or whatever. Then I heard some things I didn't like about the brand. So I didn't buy anything else from the brand. I think I had a cousin buy me one other palette from the brand, and that's how I ended up with it. But yeah, nobody talks about this brand anymore, and I'm just curious if it actually exists or not trying to sound like a jerk. It's a genuine question, like, do they still exist? Does his brand still make things? So I used to get emails from them and everything, and now it's like crickets. I don't hear nothing. I never followed them on Instagram, so I guess I can look into it myself. But I'm just curious, did you all remember when everybody was talking about Scott Barnes, and now you haven't seen anything from Scott Barnes brand? Or does it exist anymore? What's going on? I don't know. I'm just curious. Because I know my girl, Dionluvsmakeup, did a lot of reviews on his stuff too. But I'm like, I'm just wondering, does it still exist anymore or not? I don't know. Anyway, next, I have the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. Now, everybody's talking about this for a while. They're talking about how much they loved it and all that. I was never a huge fan of this one, but y'all already know that. Like, you got this orangish row right here. You got this, like, pinkish row right here. And then you got this bluish, greenish, purplish type row. And I just never really got into this palette. Although it has colors in it, I don't know. I like the color story, but to me it's just weird. So that's why I never really wanted to use it. Plus, I didn't feel like it was like that great as opposed to some other ones. Not that it's bad quality. It's just, I don't know. Like, the color story just doesn't speak to me, doesn't call to me. I didn't buy this regular price. I bought this off somebody off Poshmark just because I'm like, I don't use this type of stuff. Don't use this type of stuff, but I don't like this color story, so it didn't make me want to use this palette. But I know Andrea Montanaro loves this palette, and she was talking about it, like, I think last year or whatever, but I haven't heard anybody talk about this palette in quite the while. I watched I think somebody panned this in like a video I watched recently. But again, nobody actually talks about this. Everybody talks about the Naughty Nude, and then talks about the Rose Quartz that came out last year. So they talk about the last two palettes from the last 2 years, but nobody talks about that one anymore, which I find interesting because everybody was so in love with it and talking about the color story and this and that, and I was never a fan of the color story to begin with. So there you go. The last palette I have to talk about is the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette. Now, this one came out last year, and you literally hear nobody else talking about it like at all. I've heard no one talk about this, reference it, do anything of the sort. And that's the weird things about it to me, is like, everybody loves neutral tones as a general rule. I'm the weirdo who wants to have colorful eyes and, you know, be out here as what's her name, as Angie says, looking like a sexy vampire. Like, I'm the one who wants to be out here looking like that. So the fact that, you know, this is like what the general population likes and nobody's talking about it is interesting to me. Because I expected people to talk about this still now, because it's not super old, and she hasn't come out with any more like neutral palettes since she came out with this one. The last palette she came out with, y'all know, was the pastel palette. We haven't had any more neutrals since then, or maybe the Baby Biba came out after that. I'm not sure, but the point is, this is a really neutral, really popular palette. It has her face stuff in it. It has nice eyeshadows in it, and since people love the glam eyeshadow palette originally, I figured people would still be talking about this, but I don't feel like anyone is. So yeah, so what do y'all think about my picks of these palettes, of how nobody's talking about them anymore, even though people were like raving about them to the high heavens before, but now you don't hear anything? Let me know down below if you agree with me, or have you seen other creators talking about it and just the creators that I watch don't talk about it anymore? Because I know nobody I watch just about talks about any of the stuff that I just talked about. I only heard what Baddie Bean talking about how Kaleidos should bring the 6-pan palettes back. I haven't heard about anybody else talking about any of these other things that I just mentioned. So, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Remember, you all are diamonds. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Be blessed, girl. Bye.